Ho! Welcome back to Tech Noir. Jason Dolan,
Seth Slick.
We are here to continue our little series of IMDB versus the Oscars, where we're comparing the films that won Best Picture, according to the Academy of Arts Motion Picture. I can't even say it. The Oscars, and versus the highest ranked movies from that year, utilizing IMDb's top 250 list. And we've done the 1990s, we've done the 1970s, now we're moving into the 1980s. We're going to begin with a film that I know my cohort here has never seen that won Best Picture, which was...
That's true, that's Ordinary People.
Ordinary People. I actually, when I was in acting, when I was studying acting at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta, I had to do a scene from Ordinary People, one of the Timothy Hutton scenes. So I went and watched it, and you know, it was a good movie, but that was over 20 years ago, and I really have no memory of Ordinary People. Like, if I watched it again, I'd probably be like the first time I ever saw it. Be like The French Connection, as I mentioned earlier. In an earlier video. It's like some movies, no matter how many times I see them, it's like the first time I ever see them. And I think it's a good movie. It's a movie about family. But the reason why I'd say I probably don't really remember it is because the movie that is the highest rated movie on IMDb for 1980 is...
Oh, that's Empire Strikes Back.
Guys, come on. It's considered the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. There'll never be another Star Wars movie that will ever be anything like this. It had two iconic lines, I love you, I know, and I am your father. So that, to me, sums up relationships where you're with somebody and you show how much you love them and they're clearly with you and they finally say to you that they love you and you're like, I know, that's why we're doing this, dance, It just really, the epitome of just beauty of like movie relationships and real life relationships, and then father and son, that relationship, not knowing who your father, thinking your father is something that he's totally not, and then finding out, of course, that your father is galactic evil is probably worst case scenario after he cuts your hand off. Worst case scenario for sure, but Lando Calrissian, one of the coolest characters in the Star Wars universe as well, giving Han Solo somebody to really reflected his character, who he was, how shady he was when we meet him in A New Hope.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is the guy, like the double crosser that he's friends with, and of course, but ultimately it turns out that they're good guys, and redeem themselves from these tough positions that they're put in. We meet Yoda, some of the greatest puppetry work that we've ever seen with Frank Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and third, talk about like do or do not, there is no try. I mean, judge me by my size, do you? I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah.
No. It's... And the Lord of the Rings, it's like the Lord of the Rings, every single Lord of the Rings movie was nominated for Best Picture.
Yep.
Every single Star Wars movie in this original trilogy should have been nominated for Best Picture, and, I'm sorry, The Empire Strikes Back should have won. I mean, there's just, also that year, I know, was The Shining, which is an incredible Stanley Kubrick film, and there is, Raging Bull, which was another incredible a Scorsese movie.
Yep. Elephant Man.
Elephant Man, right. We're talking about Anthony Hopkins, I am not an animal. It's definitely a great year for movies. I mean, really, for me, it's like Empire Strikes Back, The Shining, Elephant Man, Raging Bull. Like, those four movies should have all been nominated for Best Picture. I know Raging Bull was. I'm not even sure about the others. And then, sure, Ordinary People could have been the fifth nominee, but not the winner, not the best movie of the year. I think even that was the year that Warren Beatty won Best Director for Reds, and Robert Redford won Best Picture. It was one of those weird split years.
Yeah.
But I just think it's one of those things with the Academy sort of being out of touch.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, and the '80s, man, I disagree with almost every year in the 80s of what won Best Picture. And so did the rank. I mean, Ordinary People's not even ranked. Empire Strikes Back is 12th all time, so get out of here. So then we're going to move on. I mean, is there anything else we need to even say about this?
No, I don't think so.
So now 1981, boy, this is like, if you thought you couldn't get worse than Ordinary People versus Empire Strikes Back, we're going to start with what won Best Picture, and that was
Chariots of Fire.
Dun 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 dun. I mean, my mom probably loved this movie. She loved everything Masterpiece Theater. I've just never had any desire or want to watch Chariots of Fire. Maybe I saw it when I was younger, and I definitely never thought about seeing it again. It's probably a good movie. Again, we're not saying these are bad movies. Ordinary People's a good movie. Chariots of Fire is a good movie. But is it better than Raiders of the Lost Ark? Steven Spielberg, I mean, come on. Okay, Jaws didn't get ranked higher than One Flew. Okay, I can live with that. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, gets, overshadowed by Apocalypse Now. I can live with that. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, I mean, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, it's like Wonder Twin powers activate. What the hell, dude? I mean, Harrison Ford. I mean, this was almost, who was it? It was almost played Indiana Jones?
Oh, God. You're gonna stump me on this one. I have no idea.
Tom Selleck.
Oh, God, that's right.
Tom Selleck was supposed to play Indiana Jones, couldn't get out of his Magnum PI contract. Thank you, Magnum PI producers, because Harrison Ford murdered this role. I mean,
and here's the interesting thing about this particular year is Chariots of Fire shows you just kind of how far that shift from the studio system to the auteur system really carried.
Yeah.
Because all of, when you get the 70s, when you get French Connection, when you get One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, when you get some of those darker roles,
right,
it seems like, okay, well, the stories they want to tell are kind of gritty, and then all of a sudden you get Rocky. It's like, oh, it's kind of uplifting. It's still auteur-esque.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, come on. I mean, it's like, it could have been Quigley Down Under, but they lucked out. They got Harrison Ford, one of the greatest castings of all time. So, 1982, we have the winner of Best Picture, which was...
That was Gandhi.
Gandhi. And Ben Kingsley. Once again, this goes to our whole thing in the 70s with, George C. Scott and Gene Hackman and Jack Nicholson, and just sort of when the performance... Mm-hmm. Even... I think Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump, where it's like, yes, Ben Kingsley should have won the Oscar for playing Gandhi. Definitely. But does that mean that the movie was the best movie of the year? And I'd say this one's not quite as much of a slam dunk per se as the Raiders of the Lost Ark and Empire Strikes Back one goes, but the movie that would have won, according to IMDb, is...
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Harrison Ford again. Ridley Scott, who, with Alien, had redefined the genre. Created one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Jaws in Space, Sigourney Weaver, The Facehugger, The Chest Burster. And here we're getting sort of this noir, tech noir thriller.
Right.
See how we tied that in? With Harrison Ford and replicants and androids and just sort of like I always wonder, Blade Runner is one of those movies where it's like, I wonder what it would look like if Spielberg had directed it. Or I wonder what it would have looked like if Stanley Kubrick had directed it.
Yeah.
I guess it technically would have looked like AI, but but no, it is one of those movies, but Ridley Scott, which we really didn't know too much about. Obviously we knew Alien, but he was sort of still under the radar, and with Blade Runner, he just kind of created this dystopian future that became very influential on other filmmakers like James Cameron, specifically with the Terminator, franchise. Sure. And even Cameron, who later directed the sequel to Aliens. Like, I always saw these guys as sort of similar influencing, or just the aesthetic of Scott, how it had started influencing science fiction in general, because we were in the midst of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So this was the opposite. I don't think Blade Runner was a big box office hit.
No, I think it did relatively well.
Yeah. It probably did like 30 million, which was, probably like 100 million back then. When you...
For sure.
But again, it's like, there's been how many cuts of... it's like, there's so many cuts. There's like 3 cuts. It was like the original cut, there's the director's cut, there's the final cut. It's like it's sort of, but it's like instead of like George Lucas where he makes his movies worse, Blade Runner does get better with you do want to watch the final cut.
For sure.
I think in the original cut, which is really interesting, is like the end footage was recycled footage from The Shining, the opening of The Shining.
Yeah.
And also, fun fact about The Shining and Raiders of the Lost Ark is that where Jack Nicholson's typing in the hotel lobby, that's the Well of the Souls, same soundstage.
Yep.
And these, it's fun how all these filmmakers are just kind of, they're just all next to each other while they're making their films and creating this stuff. And Ridley Scott's calling up Stanley Kubrick and being like, hey, can I borrow some of this footage that we need to like tack on because the studio wants me to do this stupid voiceover. But yes, it's like when I think of Blade Runner not winning Best Picture, it's like tears in the rain.
I don't know. See, this is one of those ones where I actually think the Academy got it right.
You do think they got it right with Gandhi?
I think they got it right with Gandhi.
All right.
Don't get me wrong. I love Blade Runner, and I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. So Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Probably one of the best. Probably one of the best sci-fi books written.
Right.
But as far as Blade Runner,
is it a book or a short story?
Or
is it a novella?
I think it's a novella.
Right. Okay.
But I think my issues with Blade Runner are definitely, and depending on which version of it you watch,
right.
Obviously, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a few
That's a big
things that
deal. Where
change.
like they, it's like where the filmmaker wasn't able to release like his initial. I mean, even I think Zack Snyder's with Batman vs Superman right now getting a little bit of that where it's like my 3-hour R-rated cut. When you guys see that, you're gonna fucking love it.
For
all
sure.
you critics. But I
think what it comes down to is I honestly think.
Well, that's the thing is that Richard Attenborough got to release his 3-hour version of Gandhi. He didn't have to cut it down.
Exactly. But it was also extremely well executed. I think Blade Runner was still a little choppy.
Right.
In places.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I think this is definitely I totally like concede like Gandhi. And by the way, I've seen Gandhi all the way through on like some of these other films we talked about, and I've watched Gandhi a couple of times. Ben Kingsley is so good at that movie. A lot of people don't even know this. Like a lot of people just talking about all the whitewashing that's going on in Hollywood right now with Ghost in the Shell, particularly in The Ancient One and Doctor Strange. Well, everybody says Ben Kingsley, is like this English actor playing this. Actually, Ben Kingsley's half Indian. So, so he was, genetically entitled to play the role of Gandhi. I mean, and look, you're right. I agree with that. I'm not going to fight you on it.
No, sure.
I'm not going to fight you. Gandhi can have that one. But I think like and Gandhi was ranked 203 and Blade Runner was ranked 139. So it's even kind of close. It's like Gandhi's up there. It's not like these other films that are not even ranked. Gandhi is a ranked movie, so you should go watch Gandhi. If you have not seen it, it's definitely worth it. Okay, 1983, we have the winner of Best Picture. Speaking of a not rated movie, this movie is not on the list, and it is...
Terms of Endearment.
Terms of Endearment. Wonderful movie.
And I'll be perfectly honest, I've seen it maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's about.
Yeah, I can't remember the actors that are in it. I mean, what is Warren Beatty's sister?
Oh, God. Nope.
We know it. This is so embarrassing. Shirley MacLaine. Right. And, and she's, I think it's like her daughter is dying of cancer.
Okay.
And it's like who's married to John Lithgow.
Okay, yeah, it's coming back.
And then she's also having the relationship with Jack Nicholson, who's the astronaut. So it's a very sad movie, and it's a tearjerker, and it's a wonderful movie. It doesn't, but more for the performances than the overall picture.
For sure.
So the movie that is the highest rated, 1983. If you've been paying attention, it's probably pretty obvious if you know how many years in between Star Wars movies there are.
Yep.
It is time for Return of the Jedi.
Yep. And obviously, capping off probably one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. It's almost, again, you'd almost call it a no-brainer. I mean, when you look at Lord of the Rings had...
all 3 movies nominated, and 1 for Return of the King.
Which, to be fair, was really winning for the trilogy.
Exactly. And I think with Star Wars, you really could have done the same thing. If you wanted to give it to Annie Hall, fine. If you wanted to give it to ordinary people, I don't know what you're talking about. But it really, Empire Strikes Back should have won for the trilogy in this one. I would have been happy if Empire would have won and Star Wars and Jedi were just nominated. Like,
Sure.
I would, like, forgive, but the fact that Empire didn't get nominated and Jedi didn't get nominated is crazy to me. And, you know, say what you will about the Ewoks or whatever, but, you know, that rescue sequence of Han Solo before there was a beak on the Sarlacc, you know,
Yep.
and then to the greatest like space battle of all time. I mean that end space battle, like because they talk about with The Force Awakens where it's like, oh, they're just remaking. You know, it's like, well, you know, it's like that's what Return of the Jedi did to a certain extent, where they like remade the end of A New Hope, but they did it in such an incredible way where you have them down on Endor. We're seeing, I mean, the speeder bike sequence is just alone. And then the final confrontation with Vader and Luke. I mean, and Vader redeeming and becoming good again. Spoilers. I mean, it's just like that had me I watched that over and over as a kid, and it just made me think, like, it gave me hope for humanity in any person. It's just like, oh, no matter how bad a person what they do, it's like you can always find redemption. It represents the capping of like one of the greatest trilogies of all time.
For sure.
And I guess, you know, like they say, like, well, they won with money, but they should have won with the respect of the peers as well.
For sure. Especially when you go back and when you look at the storyline that it gets broken down, like Star Wars is essentially the perfect adaptation of a hero's journey.
Yep.
And you know, the way it culminates.
Joseph Campbell.
Check him out if you haven't read it. Read it. It's amazing.
Yep.
You know, it's that culmination of you can have something that's big and fun and explosions and goofy and weird, but also still has a heart and a soul, something you can really, you know, exactly, something that will stay with you for a prolonged period of time, as we can clearly see. And
look at these books. I mean, look at these classic Star Wars books, man. I mean, like, come on, all this stuff. You know, the original trilogy on VHS. From Star Wars to this scene right here, the Princess Leia rescuing Han and the Carbonite. I mean, all of these characters and just everything that Star Wars gave us. A Boba Fett, you know, although nobody likes how he died. But maybe that's the reason why it didn't win the Oscar. If they had killed Boba Fett in a cooler way, it would have won.
There you go.
Okay, 1984. This is a crazy one. This is like definitely like this is so weird for me. So what won Best Picture?
That was Amadeus.
And Amadeus should have won Best Picture. It's ranked 87th all time.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely should have won Best Picture. The highest rated movie is
Once Upon a Time in America.
Yeah, and which is ranked 69th. So they're really like neck and neck. And this is again Sergio Leone, incredible director, and this is definitely a great movie, but it's not one I go back to and visit ever. With De Niro and James Woods. I mean, do you visit this movie a lot, or?
I wouldn't say a lot. It's definitely one of the ones that I like to go back and catch it once in a while.
Yeah.
Just because of the scope.
Right.
You know, telling that all-American story.
Sure.
You know.
Yes.
Really, just, you know, it holds up.
Yes.
For sure. I will say the Academy got it right with Amadeus.
Yeah, Amadeus is just, I mean...
I sat down and watched Amadeus last week.
Yeah, I'll watch it whenever it's on.
Yeah.
Whenever that movie's on. And I think there's actually a director's cut of Amadeus as well. It's also just
a little
phenomenal.
over 3 hours. Absolutely fantastic.
Tom Hulce, F. Murray Abraham, those two performances both got nominated. F. Murray Abraham won. Tom Hulce would have won if they would have done the old, like, hey, he can be the supporting guy, even though he's playing the title character. Like, let's put him in the supporting category and we'll win both Oscars. But
fun fact about Amadeus, do you know who was supposed to play Amadeus?
Ooh, who was supposed to play Amadeus?
Who originated the role?
Mark Hamill.
Where?
No, I'm not. Is it really Mark Hamill?
Yeah.
No, what? Really? I just guessed that.
Yeah. Mark Hamill originated the role of Amadeus in the play on Broadway. The reason they cast Tom Hulce instead in the film, you know, hearsay, according to whatever, is because of Hamill's roles in Star Wars. They didn't think it was going to be a believable switch for him to do that. And Hulce was coming off of Parenthood.
No. Parenthood was 1989.
Okay, I must have flipped that around then.
Yeah, but he was. I don't know what Hulce was coming off.
He was coming off of.
But he was, I think, another stage actor as well at the time. I don't think I ever knew Hulce from anything before Amadeus.
Yep.
But damn, Mark Hamill, I had no idea.
Now think about that.
I was just trying to be funny there. I was literally, I was like, who can I say that's absurd? But it was also irrelevant that time. And we were just talking about Return of the Jedi. I'll say Mark Hamill. But Mark Hamill, have you seen Mark Hamill recently in Kingsman? That dude was damn talented. And I can't wait for the Killing Joke.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic.
R-rated Batman cartoon. Amazing. Bring it on, baby. And Hamill is the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, I can't wait. So, yeah, Amadeus, that's the right one. That was the right call. So I think all the IMDb voters out there, go out there and vote up Amadeus. Let's get this as the top-rated movie. And once upon it's not going anywhere. It's not going to leave the top 100.
No.
All right, so now we get to 1985. Now we're going to get back on track to the worst decade of the Oscars streak here with Out of Africa winning Best Picture.
Right.
Not ranked. And Out of Africa, Robert Redford, Meryl Streep, two incredible actors. And once again, like, if you want to give them the best actors, great. But Out of Africa is a film. Fine movie. I've seen it once. It's fine.
For sure.
I know Out of Africa more because that's the novel that Holden Caulfield was reading in Catcher in the Rye.
Right.
For whatever reason. So I know the novel was really good, and the movie is good, and it's this period. It's this thing of period dramas, like Ordinary People, Terms of Endearment, Chariots of Fire, even Amadeus, which we agreed upon, Gandhi, which you like. I mean, you see the trend of the 80s and what I'm talking about. But where they're missing it is the films that like Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Return of the Jedi and even Blade Runner Once Upon a Time in America is also sort of an epic, but the movie going experience, and I think there's this thing of like recounting the history, which is interesting, versus the future, like inspiring like what we can become and elevating and imaginations, and the top ranked movie in 1985 is
Back to the Future, of course.
I mean, I wish I could go back to the 1985 and get all the ballots. Go back 30 years and get all the ballots and try. Okay, guys, we gotta change a few things. But didn't even get nominated for Best Picture, I don't think. Like, really,
it didn't go anywhere. And again, you're seeing that trend, that sharp divide between the Academy stretching out and reaching for those. You can call them highbrow, call them intellectual. That they're kind of reaching for that art. It's art. It's got to be about the art. Versus, when you look at everything that's ranked number one on IMDb so far in this list, and wait till you see where we get to, later on. It's all, they're blockbusters. They're popcorn films. They're fun, but they all have that little spark of something that keeps them going. There's a reason.
They're not Transformers. We're not saying Transformers should win Best Picture because it made the most money and it's got a lot of special effects and it's sci-fi. Back to the Future is about going back in time and understanding how your parents fell in love and who your parents really were and why they're your parents and where you came from. And then like also and if you could infect their parents and change and make them better people and help them be their better selves. And it's a movie that it sparked my imagination. It definitely inspired me as a filmmaker and wanting to look at this, time travel. I mean, the prior year, 1984, talking about, for me even, we were talking about Once Upon a Time in America and Amadeus, but the Terminator came out that year.
Yep.
And that to me, also I was just time travel and thinking about that and thinking, when I watch a movie, it's sometimes like time travel, bringing me back to who I was when I first saw it, or I see it completely differently now because of how I've changed, and how I watch it with new eyes, through new experiences. And
for sure,
there's so many. Back to the Future, and it's just a good movie. It's a feel-good movie. And they give the feel-good Oscar out a little more so now than they have in the past. Like Slumdog Millionaire is like this feel-good movie, that won, spoiler alert for future episodes. But Back to the Future, man, that should have totally won Best Picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, you agree.
No, yeah, hands down.
And Robert Zemeckis was in college with George Lucas in the early 70s. Like, they were contemporaries.
Yep.
Zemeckis is all a part of that whole Spielberg, Coppola, Lucas, Scorsese, class of filmmaker. He just kind of came into his own a little later than they did. But, oh my God. All right, 1986. Here's a year where I actually... this is 1986 is such a good year. Such a good year for movies. I mean, there's so many films that can be listed in this year, but the movie that won Best Picture was
Platoon.
And Platoon is like Shakespeare to me. It really is. When I look at Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe, who were both nominated, Charlie Sheen back when he was like a great actor and making great movies. He's always a great actor, but like really...
He was really locked in the 80s. Like,
he got some good parts.
Project to project.
And you know what's interesting is, who was supposed to play Charlie Sheen's role in Platoon?
Mm-mm.
Tom Cruise. And the reason why he turned it down is because he had just shot Top Gun. And he was like, I can't go do this again. And it showed later on. Yep. And then Tom Cruise was also supposed to be in Wall Street. But he was he was already committed to Cocktail.
Yep.
And that's why eventually they did Born on the 4th of July together,
Yeah.
Which actually won Stone his second directing Oscar.
Yep.
But didn't win Best Picture that year. We'll get to 1989 coming soon in this video. But that year, Platoon, Platoon's phenomenal. It's an incredible film.
It's a fantastic film, and it really took what you saw in Apocalypse Now a step further, which is that's a hard statement to say when you can take something and take it a step further, and really brought that gruesome reality of the war to the screen. Like it did not hold back.
It was, and I saw it. I was 12 years old. I saw it in the theater, and my dad was in the Air Force, so I was very familiar with and I had already seen Apocalypse Now at that time, and I was very familiar with this stuff with the war. But this movie wasn't so hard to watch because it was like Shakespeare, as I say, with that the two fathers battling for the son.
Yeah.
I related it very much to the stuff that I had gotten out of Star Wars and out of Back to the Future, like father-son stuff. Like,
for sure.
And my dad always took me to movies, because he was in the Air Force and he was gone on TDY and leave and all this stuff, and he would come back and he would take me to the movies. That would be our fun thing to do together. So I saw a lot of these great films with my dad. And also interesting, the supporting cast in Platoon: Johnny Depp, Forrest Whitaker, Keith David. There are some great actors that came out of this film. Very similar to Apocalypse Now in that regard. But and Platoon is ranked 176th on IMDb, and but ranked 64th is
Aliens. Now, I'll agree with this that I would say, personal opinion, I'm a little biased. I think Aliens should have won that year.
Here's the fun thing about Aliens. Aliens got 6 Academy Award nominations. Didn't get a Best Picture nomination. Sigourney Weaver got nominated for Best Actress for playing Ripley. So, man, Aliens is, again, I will watch that movie
over and over
again. It took, the original Alien, which was like Jaws in space, and this was, again, Apocalypse Now in space. These Marines, the Colonial Marines, got Bill Paxton, we're in some real pretty shit down, man. Oh, what are we gonna put her in charge? So many incredible lines from him. Michael Biehn, who had just been in The Terminator. Lance Henriksen. Just phenomenal movie.
And James Cameron built upon what Ridley Scott had, established in Alien, and James Cameron, I think you can say, is responsible for building out that world.
Oh, totally.
Ridley Scott did an excellent job of isolating that, the alien, the creature, the one creature in Alien. Yeah. And James Cameron kind of stepped in and went, okay, well, let's see, what is the rest of this universe look like?
It's two different styles. It's almost interesting. It's like what they're doing with all the new Star Wars movies and the anthologies, where they're bringing in these other directors, and it's like that same world from a different point of view, which is what's so cool. And also with Alien, it's interesting. With Ridley Scott's aesthetic, it was while there were similarities in this. I'm a Prometheus apologist. I like Prometheus. I like watching it. Like, it has its many issues. Turn left, and all that shit. But I really love Ridley Scott. He's a beautiful filmmaker, and I can watch anything he does. But James Cameron is a beautiful filmmaker in a completely different sort of technical way. What with like Titanic and Avatar and True Lies, Terminator films, The Abyss, like. There's a gritty reality to everything that's happening. And I think that with Aliens, like, it's a scary movie every time I watch it, even to this day, because I believe everything I'm seeing. Yeah. Like, it is all 100% right there. And I buy it, I buy that this is happening, every time. But I love Platoon as well. It's really hard. Like, Platoon is one of my favorite movies of all time. But Aliens, and I understand why Platoon got it, but Aliens is by and far, at 64, the fan favorite. And, I think that...
For sure. And again, you see the continuing trend. The popcorn, blockbuster-style film versus period piece.
Exactly. So there we have it, Aliens. So now we're going to go to 1987. Once again, another unranked period piece.
The Last Emperor.
And, The Last Emperor, great film. Very, very good movie. Very well done. It's a little tough to watch. Peter O'Toole, good performance from him in it. But the 86th highest ranked movie of all time is our good friend
Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
And here we go. It's like if Aliens had won Best Picture, Full Metal Jacket would have won, But because a Vietnam movie had just won, I feel like that's why Full Metal Jacket didn't win. But come on, man. Full Metal Jacket's fucking crazy, dude.
Well, and again, how many times do you hear people running around spouting any part of Arlie Ermey's anything from the first half of that movie?
Arlie Ermey should have won. What a performance. And Vincent D'Onofrio.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew Modine, back when he was doing good movies, when he was a movie star. And this movie is like, it's literally split into two halves.
Yeah.
It's like Training, and then like however many years later, and then In the Shit. Yeah. And it's almost like two different films.
Yeah. It really feels that way sometimes, because when you get that divide that, Vincent D'Onofrio, spoiler, when he kills himself in the bathroom,
right,
really splits that film in half.
Yeah, it's like, not only is war hell, but the preparation of war being hell. And man, I don't know, man. My brother was in the Navy, and he told me about some of the shit that went down when he was in training, and like just the Joker and how like they had. It's one of those things where they're being so tough on you because they're trying to save your life. They're trying to turn you into these killing machines to save your life. That is. And if you're soft, you're not going to survive war. It's hard to survive. It's hard to survive reality. Just an inner city, an urban city, like or New York City or something like that, without being a little hard. But war is like hell. But at the same time, Full Metal Jacket is also just this beautiful film too. It's so beautiful to look at. Every frame that Kubrick like sets up is just.
And again, we go back to the what's made a lasting impact. Kubrick as a director,
yes,
has made a lasting impact with every single film that he put out.
I don't even know who directed The Last Emperor. I really don't know. It's one of those things. It's like. I couldn't name it off the top of my head. I probably, if I really sat here and thought about it, but I'm not going to have a Shirley MacLaine sort of like, moment. But, right. Kubrick. This is it, man. This would have been Kubrick winning again. He would have already won a couple of times before in the 70s and when we get to the earlier decades. Kubrick is a guy that should have won multiple Oscars. He's, I think, the greatest director of all time, really. I really think that we'll never have another Kubrick. But if there's like a young filmmaker out there that wants to try and emulate somebody, Kubrick is the guy to emulate. He's so good. All right. So I don't think there's any contest there. Now 1988, this is a fucking weird year for me because I do love the movie that won Best Picture. It's ranked 284th, and that is
Rain Man.
Rain Man, incredible movie. This is like, I remember with like, Dustin Hoffman, winning the Oscar for this. I was like, damn, Tom Cruise should have gotten nominated.
At least, yeah.
And maybe should have won, because playing opposite that, playing Charlie Babbitt to Ray Babbitt, and I mean, it was like Thelma and Louise. It's just this tandem performance, this dance that these guys did. It was so incredible. So I do love that Rain Man did win, and out of between the two films, I do think Rain Man should have won, because the second film on the list is
Cinema Paradiso,
and it's ranked 56th, and that's really, I mean, 284 to 56. That's a big disparity, you know, between those two films, and it makes me think that, you know, obviously there's a lot of people out there that really love Cinema Paradiso. I actually was tried to watch it again recently, but I was gonna watch it on Netflix, and through my Apple TV, I couldn't figure out how to get the subtitles to play. It was really weird. I was like, what am I I don't know how to get the subtitles to play in foreign films, and so I gave up, and I didn't watch it before we did this again. And because I have not seen Cinema Paradiso since the 90s. Have you seen Cinema Paradiso?
It's been a while.
Yeah, so, I mean, listen, you know, it's one of those movies where it's like, but at the same time, you know, we're talking about who tells you gotta watch Cinema Paradiso, you know, it's like, you gotta see this movie. Life is Beautiful, people have told me to watch.
Right.
You know, not as much as Cinema Paradiso, but it's a great movie. But Rain Man really is a beautiful film. However, there is another movie from 1988 that is actually ranked much higher than Rain Man. Not quite as high as Cinema Paradiso, but for me it is the best movie of the 1980s.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this. That would be what, Die Hard?
Die Hard. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker! Come on, man. Die Hard. I mean, Bruce Willis, you know, against the terrorists, and how many fucking sequels imitations to this movie.
For sure. Well,
I think it actually did get nominated for a bunch of technical Academy Awards similar to Aliens, but man, Die Hard should have won Best Picture for me. I think it's a masterpiece of cinema. Go back and watch it. There is not a false note in this movie. Gave us Alan Rickman should have won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for Die Hard. I mean, come on. I mean, that guy. I mean, he got a whole career out of this movie. You know.
Well, I mean, there's a couple other honorable mentions too that I'd like to kind of throw in there for 88. Considering, you know, don't get me wrong, Cinema Paradiso is, I'm sure it's fantastic, and yeah, I love Rain Man.
Yep.
There's a couple of other things that came out, not super popular here in the States, but definitely very popular over abroad. And that was Akira.
Yes.
Came out in 88.
I referenced that when we were talking about Princess Mononoke, where I was like, we were talking about like anime. I was like, well, Akira was the first time I remember an anime film and being needing to go and discover more anime and really getting into Japanese animation.
Yep. And as far as from you know, storytelling in the animated spectrum, Hayao Miyazaki, responsible for Princess Mononoke, did My Neighbor Totoro in 1988.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, it was taking something where Akira took animation into that big, wild. There are things you could do in this spectrum at the moment that you were never going to be able to do in live action. And what Miyazaki was doing at the time was pretty much kind of the opposite of that. He was taking a real, human, personal story and telling it through the art of animation. Something that really was only being done by Disney at the time.
Wow. You know, guys, let us know in the comments, like, which is the 1988 movie that you think is most representative? Is it My Neighbor Totoro? Is it Akira? Is it Die Hard? Is it Rain Man? Or is it Cinema Paradiso? Like, if those were the 5 movies nominated for Best Picture, that would have been pretty cool, like, you know, representing the world,
for sure.
Nominations. But, you know, what we can just say is that 1988 was something of a cinematic paradise. Oh, see how I tied that shit together? All right, finally, 1989, our final year. This was the year that Oliver Stone won Best Director for Born on the 4th of July, but Born on the 4th of July did not win Best Picture. There was another film that year. It was?
That was Driving Miss Daisy.
And Driving Miss Daisy is a phenomenal movie. And this is one of those things where I can watch Driving Miss Daisy whenever it's on. Morgan Freeman gives such an incredible performance. Jessica Tandy. My mom grew up in Georgia, so this is like watching a movie about, you know, maybe my mom's mom or my mom's grandmother. Dan Aykroyd turns in an incredible performance in this film. It's one of those weird years, too. Bruce Beresford, I don't even think he got nominated. It was like when Argo won and Ben Affleck didn't get nominated. You know, it was like, Nobody thought. I think more people thought Argo had a chance, but I don't think anybody thought that Drive Miss Daisy was going to win. It was like another Shakespeare in Love kind of year.
Yeah, you
where there was
everybody.
Totally going to be Oliver Stone wins Best Director. Born on the 4th of July, he's going to win again, and then it's what Drive Miss Daisy. But I actually think Drive Miss Daisy is the better movie than Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, it's Born on the 4th of July is a little uneven, and it's a little depressing. That movie's hard to watch. It's really like, I don't ever want to watch it. Like, I respect it's good, you should see it once, but I never want to go back to it.
For sure.
Driving Miss Daisy, it's a very important
enjoy
movie.
Watching it.
It's pleasant. It really is. If you've not seen, and I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this video have not seen Driving Miss Daisy, do yourself a favor and watch it. Watch it with your mom, too. I mean, if you can.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great, she'll love it, I bet. And it's a great movie. However, there is the 101st ranked movie on the IMDb Top 250.
Yep.
And I do have to say that I've watched this movie a lot more than Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
And it is an incredible film, and it is another sequel, and it is actually the capping of another trilogy, and that is
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Now, Temple of Doom definitely, it's a cool movie, and it was 1984, and I think that was the Amadeus year, and certainly I don't think Temple of Doom. I think it's ranked. I know it's probably ranked high. I don't even know if it is in the top 250. It's not. Like even Temple of Doom doesn't make the top 250, but Last Crusade brought it back from kind of the grossness and the scariness. I mean, I think Temple of Doom was the reason why we have a PG-13 now.
It is, and Temple of Doom was a lot darker than Raiders of the Lost Ark was.
Yes, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is still also a dark movie, but Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade is the lightest of the film. Opens with the late River Phoenix as an incredible. I mean, like he did such a great job as young Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah,
and setting up the history of that character, and it really was like they never needed to make another Indiana Jones movie. And if they never had, like, it would have just been kind of the perfect trilogy to a certain extent. Another weird thing, Temple of Doom chronologically takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So if you want to watch it in chronological order, you got to watch Temple of Doom, then you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Last Crusade.
Or actually, you got to watch the first 20 minutes of Last Crusade, then you got to watch Temple of Doom, then you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, then you go back to and you can finish watching. And then and Sean Connery, it was so funny. He was like 10 years older than Harrison Ford.
Yep.
But it just it's like when you go bald like this, it's like you look older than you are. Although people tell me I look younger than my age. But yeah, Last Crusade was such a great fun movie, and again, it's super remembered. And it's one of those weird things where it's like, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Driving Miss Daisy. It's like the criteria for what is the best picture. I think a lot of times they're trying to make the societal statement, It's like, we've got to pick all of these serious movies that deal with these issues. But, but even like, nowadays, like Avatar is getting nominated for Best Picture. And there's definitely been, in Lord of the Rings, obviously, there's been a shift. And I'd like to think of that same sort of mentality in the aughts, I think, the first decade of the 2000s of the 21st century had been applied to the 1980s, we would have gotten all of these films as our Best Picture winners. So,
sure.
In summation, you think about it, you got 2 Star Wars movies that would have won, you've got 2 Indiana Jones movies that would have won.
Yep.
You would have gotten Stanley Kubrick getting another Oscar. Obviously, like the Sergio Leone Amadeus thing is for us is a little
touchy. It could go either way.
Ridley for Blade Runner and Attenborough for Gandhi, and then but Cameron would have won his first Oscar instead of Stone. I mean, there was a lot going on in this decade, and then of course 1988, the year of the foreign film, with. Cinema Paradiso winning, but you bringing up Akira and
My Neighbor Totoro.
I'm sorry, I don't speak Japanese. And then of course Die Hard for me. I mean, this whole decade honestly is just Die Hard and Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Aliens and Blade Runner, and that's what the 80s are to me. And that's why I think all of these films really are the best pictures of those individual years and are representative of what that decade was.
Well, and again, in most of those films, have stood the test of time. They are lasting. They are films that, kids today will watch.
Yep.
Aliens will watch Star Wars, will watch Indiana Jones.
Fun fact, Amanda, who I do a lot of our reaction videos with, she falls asleep to Aliens almost every night. Either Aliens or Pretty in Pink, John Hughes. And John Hughes talking about the 80s. We didn't even bring up John Hughes, but The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, so many good films from him. I mean, the 80s, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, so many incredible movies in the 80s. It's hard to even pick just one, but these are the films that you can let us know if you agree or disagree in the comments. Definitely, Gandhi versus Blade Runner, Amadeus versus
Once Upon a Time in America,
and Aliens versus Platoon. Some of these ones. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with fellow movie geeks who would find this sort of thing and debate and conversation interesting to watch.
Yeah,
we hope you found it interesting to watch. I'm Jason Dolan. This is
Seth Slick,
and we are Tech Noir, and we are out.